Welcome to the 180th episode of the Jami Dulaney Plant-Based Wellness Podcast. My name is Jami Dulaney, and I'm your host. I'm a plant-based cardiologist and endurance athlete living in Southwest Florida. Welcome. Well, I finished the last longish run and long ride last weekend, so now it's officially taper season for the Ironman Chattanooga. Kind of happy to see time to taper come, but then it's a little scary because the big day is not that far around. I try to look at it as a big day that I get to play outside all day long from sun up to sundown, so try not to get too awful worried about it. My last run didn't go too well. Just didn't have it, so I kind of pulled the plug, just a little over 10 miles. Felt somewhat fatigued, little niggle here, little niggle there, just decided to save it for the long ride, and I'm glad I did. We did a 100-miler and felt really good about that. We've decided on nutrition for the bike. I'm going to do the bars that I make, which are basically a combination of dates, raisins, dried cherries, a little cacao powder, a little matcha powder, a few walnuts, actually added a few peanuts in there just for a kind of peanut essence. So I think those are going to be the bar that we take. I use some Scratch Lab as well early on, and I think I'll run with Scratch Lab. Not sure about the run yet, but make that decision near the end, I guess. I'll probably carry a concentrate of Scratch Labs with me for the run. Whether I use it or not, I don't know. A lot of times when you get to the run on an Ironman, nothing really looks or sounds good, but it's more comforting to have something in case you need it versus I wish I would have brought that. So probably will take it with me, and again, whether it gets used or not it remains to be seen. So I'm entering the taper period. If you all don't do endurance races, about 3 weeks out, you start to let your muscles come back. The idea is to get as much buildup and fatigue, not really overwhelming fatigue, but tired enough that you can come back at 3 weeks and be ready to go, and trained up enough that you kind of just let the niggles heal a little bit and do a little, this is the time to add a little speed in while you're decreasing the volume, but not too much, because as I know, if I add too much speed work in or try to get too fancy, I end up pulling something or getting injured. So it's a time not to get injured, try to heal up, rest up, but not get too complacent and lose any fitness. So it's kind of a nervous time. Luckily, there's plenty to do, so I fill my day up without having to find something to do in place of all the training. Nevertheless, I have another guest this weekend. It's Dr. Pam Popper from the Wellness Forum. She is the founder of Wellness Forum Health Institute. I'll leave the website in the show notes and all her information as well as her email. She said I can give out. She answers all her email. Dr. Popper has been an advocate for the people. And she is also someone that holds physicians' feet to the fire. She calls people on things that she helps physicians take their blinders off, I think is what I like to say. I've taken her course and learned about, she has live guests on her course that talk about various aspects of nutrition and medicine and things that we need to be aware of as far as pharmaceutical influences and, how to look at data and take them for what they are and expose them for what they're not. And she also does this for individuals that are trying to make informed decisions on their medical care. Often people go to a physician and, the traditional doctor-patient relationship has been, you should do this, and the patient does this, and then they wonder why they did this because maybe the outcome wasn't as good and nobody's really as happy as they could be, and they don't feel like they had a vote. Sometimes they're just presented with overwhelming amount of data and then expected to make a decision, and perhaps not all the data is presented. So Dr. Popper shows people how to go through this data. She is a great resource for data on particular conditions and what you should do if medicine is the only way, what medicines might be chosen, and then what alternatives there may be, to look at. She doesn't tell people what to do, but she helps them make a much better informed decision about what the potential possibilities are. And then, again, the idea that we all have, or that we all should have as healthcare providers, is to educate people so that they can make their own decision and be very comfortable with that decision. And at the end of the day, if you can make a decision regarding your healthcare and be comfortable about it, then you have a much better chance at a good outcome. So this is a very interesting interview. It's different from my usual interviews on plant-based nutrition. We do talk nutrition. But we kind of talk about the pharmaceutical industry with regards to the psychiatric practice, or the psychology practice, psychiatric practice, particularly where it pertains to children. Unfortunately, growing up, we all know kids that were a little bit harder to handle. Some of you may have kids that are harder to handle. Sometimes in a classroom situation, the teachers don't necessarily want to take time to handle somebody special, depending on the teacher. And the children are referred to the school nurse, and the school nurse, said the child needs to be medicated and taken to a psychologist. And in today's world, or a psychiatrist, in today's world, healthcare providers don't have time enough to spend with kids to try to figure things out, so they're often just take the word of the school system, and children are placed on medications, and they may do well for a little bit and seem calmer, easier to deal with, maybe for that particular teacher, but down the road there can be some serious side effects of these medications. And recently, Dr. Popper, she has a YouTube series that she puts out every week. She talked about a new medication called Jornay PM, which is a new form of Ritalin, an extended release form, and just how this thing got on the market so quickly. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, and we're going to talk a little bit about alternatives to some of these treatment for children, and maybe look a little bit at how child rearing has changed, how families have changed with all the things that are going on, and give people some ideas about what they can do. Obviously my daughter's grown. I'm very proud that she's working alongside me as a registered dietitian now. But you want to raise the perfect kid. You want them to have everything. You don't want them to have to suffer. And everybody's trying their best, but sometimes we parents get in the way of letting our children explore, letting our children fall down and find their own way, and also providing them with guidelines and restrictions so that they can be better people when they interact with others in a different environment. So we're going to talk about all these different things and perhaps give you some ideas for picky eaters, and how to get your family plant-based without having World War III at the dinner table. So I hope you enjoy the interview, and I'll check back afterwards. So enjoy. Welcome, Dr. Pam Popper. I am so excited to get to speak with you this afternoon.
Well, I'm excited to speak with you too. We were phone pals for a long time in class together, and then we finally got a chance to meet face to face at a conference, so that was fun.
It was great, and I am an avid listener to your YouTube video series every week, and they're always very to the point. And I kind of giggle a little bit, because as a physician, there's you don't mess words as far as taking on the medical community, and you hold our feet to the fire a lot of times, which is great. And in your one of your most recent episodes, you started talking about this new, it's called Jornay PM, a new form of Ritalin or methylphenidate that children are getting for attention deficit disorder. And, that blew me away. When I took your course, we talked about the book of anatomy. What is it?
Anatomy of an Epidemic.
Anatomy of an Epidemic, which goes into that. So I really wanted to speak with you today and just kind of delve into this subject of children and medications versus children and nutrition, and we can just have a little chat. But for those that may have missed or just want to enjoy hearing that little piece again that you did, tell me a little bit about Jornay and these few studies that didn't show much.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, so many times the drugs are approved, as you know, because they find some tiny statistical significance, but it makes no real difference. It's just meaningless. Well, anyway, the whole idea bothers me a lot. Everybody says, well, the drugs wear off. If you have an ADHD child and you give the child drugs, the drugs wear off in time for the child to sleep, and then the child gets up in the morning and he's all rowdy or she's all rowdy. And morning is a difficult time when you're trying to get the child ready for school. And you were talking about this earlier. It wasn't that way when we were kids because we knew better, right? But anyway, this new drug, you give this to your child before bed, and it's time released so that when the child gets up, he's fully medicated. Because, gosh, that's what you really want, is a child getting out of bed fully medicated. This is such a great way to start the day. And then there's further time release so that when you send your child to school, the continuation of time release so that the child stays medicated all day long. And this is supposedly a great new thing because it means there will be no more morning scenes and difficulties with this little person. And this is just a terrible idea. I mean, it was a very tiny difference in symptoms, very subjective evaluation of that reduction in symptoms. And the side effects are very similar to Ritalin in its original form, which are horrible. And I think if parents saw like here on the left side of the page, this is the actual benefit in real terms, and these are the side effects. I don't think very many parents would actually give this to their children.
No, and one of the side effects being psychosis. And, I think if you told me, hey, you want to try this drug, we'll just give you a week's supply for yourself. There's just there's a little chance of a psychotic break for you. There'd be no way I would swallow it for myself, let alone a child.
Well, and we're doing this to children, and here's the thing. I just saw another article that made my skin crawl, and it was about this very issue that giving all of these psych drugs, any of these psych drugs to children, causes psychosis in a larger percentage than people might imagine. And the psychiatrist said, well, that's really not a problem because you just put them on an antipsychotic then. And that's what we have Seroquel and Risperdal for. So the leading cause right now of bipolar in children is the use of stimulants and antidepressants to begin with. And then the child, actually just the use of the stimulant drugs means the child goes through bipolar all day long, cycles in and out of bipolar, so eventually requires medication for it. And a doctor at Harvard University by the name of Joseph Biederman, who I think is a criminal, he failed to report $1.6 million that he took from the drug companies to the university. That's a big number to forget. I mean, it wasn't like $160. It was $1.6 million, right? So Joe, come on, you didn't forget about it. But he's sort of responsible for this idea that, believe it or not, caught on, that actually we're doing the parents a favor by having them drug their kids for ADHD because it uncovers hidden bipolar that would have taken longer to develop if we just left the child alone to mature into adulthood. So there's this hidden bipolar thing that if you uncover it earlier is somehow better because we've got Seroquel for that. So I mean, just the logic of this starts to make your head hurt after a bit.
Yeah, it's like saying, well, you have a family history of diabetes, so we're going to go ahead and give you donuts now so we can get you on metformin early.
Right. That's exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing.
It really is crazy. And then the other thing about it is, looking at, you said 5.9 to 7.1% difference perhaps in these 3 to 6 week studies, never looking down the road. Right. But when there was I can't remember the study, but when you ask parents, you give a kid a drug, and I mean, you can't look at a more biased population and say to the mom, do you think it was better? I mean, most likely they're going to say, I think it's better.
It's better. It is better. Okay, and think of all the ways that you could make it better. The definition of better is I just don't want the kid making trouble. All right. Yeah. So, I mean, if you let the child drink wine, it settles people right on down. So, you could use tranquilizer darts. When he starts to act out and run around the room, you just keep going, right, and tranquilizer darts, and the kid just falls on the floor, and that's, interrupted activity. So if we're not really worried about anything else except for controlling in the moment, everything works. The problem is we're losing sight, as you mentioned, the long term is the thing. So you've got two long-term issues. One is the long-term effects of the drugs, which are horrible, and the outcomes are horrible. On every measurement, the National Association or the National Institute of Mental Health has determined that on every measurement imaginable, ranging from employment to criminal activity to finishing school, these drugs are a failure. So you've got an immediate improvement in behavior, long-term disaster, and you're missing all that developmental time to actually teach the child how to behave. Because the thing that I've learned about attention deficit children, and I learned this from one of my business partners, who's a very famous psychiatrist, Dr. Peter Bregan, is the problem with these children is often that they don't understand that they're part of something else. Like, I'm a member of a family. Not just, I'm 6 years old and I'm not the only person on the planet. Go figure. When I go to school, I'm a member of a classroom, and so I'm expected to be part of that group, and there are behavioral norms that allow me to interact with this group. This is preparation for adulthood. I mean, I'm a partner in this business here, but I'm not the only person in the building. I have to get along with people, so I can't just go screaming through the room and do whatever I want and lay on the floor, So the sooner you learn this kind of stuff, the better, and the parents don't really understand this, and it's not being explained to them, but you're missing all this developmental time to teach this little person how to grow up and become a productive adult.
Yeah, it is really, really, really scary and sad. And, when we go back and look at, it's just, in some respects, the kids are just the next target in a line of pharmaceuticals in the psychiatric industry. And, this book that we talked about earlier, Anatomy of an Epidemic, when I read that book, I mean, it was a page-turning thriller for me, as far as just in awe about, I can't believe this stuff happened. Interestingly, I was in medical school. I graduated in '87, so DSM-3 was, I think it was I don't think DSM-4, maybe DSM-4 just came out. I have one of the editions, but I mean, it was touted as the Bible of psychiatry. And you looked and you had to, to make an accurate diagnosis of somebody, 2 of these, 3 of these, 1 of these, and you've got this. Mm-hmm. And never did I realize that this just, some guy just kind of pulled this out of his rear.
They made it up. They made it up. This is an invented thing. There's no such thing as a chemical imbalance in the brain that causes any behavioral abnormality other than something seizure-like, So this is made up, and it was basically, going back to this book and some others like it that have been written, the psychiatry profession has been in trouble for a long time. It's been, I think Whitaker refers to it in another book as a crisis of credibility. And it's well-deserved, this crisis of credibility, because remember, these are people who are doing frontal lobotomy. They lobotomized one of the Kennedy kids. These are people that were locking people in state institutions and putting them in insulin coma and electroshock therapy and this sort of thing. So they had a bit of a bad reputation, well-deserved, and they developed this idea that if we could wear white coats and prescribe drugs, then we'd be like real doctors, and we're the only ones who could do it. Another problem the psychiatrists were having is social workers and clergy and psychologists were getting really good at helping people in a meaningful way. Psychiatrists weren't really helping people with electroshock therapy. So we're the only people that can prescribe. As clergy and social workers, they can't pass on drugs, right? So this would give them a competitive edge. And Eli Lilly got that message loud and clear, and they had a drug named Prozac, which everyone knows about, was never developed for depression, either in children or adults. It was supposed to be for something else, which is almost always how these drugs start. It was a miserable failure for whatever it was developed for, but everybody said, boy, the patients taking it sure are happy. Maybe we've got a use for this. And next thing you know, you got a blockbuster billion-dollar drug, and only, you just can't even make stuff up that's as crazy as what actually happens.
Yeah, I was just flabbergasted as you go through. And again, and really in the world I practice in, it is really hard to find anybody that will talk to anybody. And the worst thing about some of these medications is now I mean, okay, forget about the MD that at least maybe had some pharmaceutical training that theoretically this works by doing this, and maybe the half-life of it and how it's metabolized. But now they're being passed out by nurse practitioners, physician's assistants. Somebody walks in, I'm blue, nobody asked, did their parents just die or some horrific accident or something just happened that they have a reason to be blue? They're given this medication, and then one thing leads to another, and one thing leads to another. And, from a cardiology standpoint, their cholesterol goes up, their triglycerides go up, they gain weight, they get diabetes, and they feel bad, they eat bad. It becomes a vicious cycle. And it is crazy. But to cycle back, I guess, to the kids, because that's kind of how we started. And there's so many tangents to go with this way. You just want to, like you say, you just want to scream. But... kids need to eat good too. And oftentimes when we talk to families, part of the problem, people give in to their children because they, dinner time can be, like morning, dinner time can be a hassle scene. So it's easier to feed a kid hot dogs and mac and cheese and get them to be quiet, or the, whatever sugary cereal. And, we're not helping their brain develop there either.
Right. Well, a couple of things I want to say about that. First of all, we talked about the behavioral aspect of this, where the child doesn't really understand that he's in the room with other people and there are other people to think about. But another aspect of this that has a lot to do with the food is that, people are kind of restless and they don't think so well when they're hungry and when they're hypoglycemic. So people around here will tell you, I have to eat like every 3 or 4 hours, or it's like somebody took the batteries out of my head. Think about this little kid who gets up in the morning, drugged or not drugged, and he has some type of toast or pastries or junk sugar cereal, whatever. So he gets a sugar spike, a glucose spike, and then he crashes. And then there's no food for about 5 hours until lunchtime, when he gets another terrible meal that's not brain food, right? And so we wonder why this child is restless and he's not paying attention. I'd be restless and not paying attention here if I had Pop-Tarts for breakfast and chicken nuggets and French fries for lunch. That really doesn't allow me to function very well. So, and then you add to that a little dehydration. Okay, we have to write letters to schools all the time asking for an exception so that the child can drink water at school, because this is definitely the type of radical thing that must require some type of special permission, drinking water at school. You don't want too much of that going on. What would happen to the country if all children drank water at school, right? So you get a dehydrated child who's extremely hypoglycemic and underfed and not fed with good stuff. And he misbehaves and he can't think and he can't do math. And we say, yeah, you know what? It's a chemical imbalance in the brain. How about it's a deficiency of plant food? Maybe we could look at it that way. So anyway, you start by cleaning this whole thing up and understanding that the behavioral aspect of this and the concentration aspect of this does have something to do with the food. The second thing is there's a mentality. We have just the one idea about this overall, in my opinion, and that is that there's food and then there's kid food. All right, so when a child starts to eat, we have to give the child kid food, because the child would not be interested in adult food. So you see these situations where people are sitting down to dinner and mom and dad are having a steak and broccoli. Well, we could talk about that for a long time. But the child is eating macaroni and cheese or a cheeseburger, in fact, because he needs kid food. And so we got to get away from that idea. All over the world, children just get food because that's all there is. That's what happened when I was a kid. That's what happened when you're a kid. We just get food. So the child should be eating with the rest of the family, eating what the family is eating. And the last thing I'll say, this is totally politically incorrect, and maybe people will send us both a lot of hate emails, but I have to say it. And that is that we have to pick some priorities. And I see families where 2 or 3 children, parents run around all over the place. There's no eating meals together or at a regular time because we're worried about soccer practice and somebody's got to go to dance. And, I remember doing a lot of extracurricular activities when I was a kid. But you know what? At 6 o'clock, we sat down to dinner. When we were with our grandparents, at 6 o'clock, remarkably consistent. We sat down with our grandparents. There were no kid food, eating whatever. And if you didn't want to eat that, that's great. You just don't get anything else, And so I think we have to get back to family dinners. And I did a video clip a couple weeks ago about the fact that we now know that the family dinner not only benefits the children, better academic performance, they eat better, all this, but the parents do better. The parents sleep better, they eat better, everything is better. So anyway, it's better for the parents. It's better for everybody. So we need to really dial back a lot of this ridiculous activity and decide what's important. And I think family dinners are really important.
I say here to that. Getting back to family dinner, I couldn't agree more. People sitting down, eating together. You look your child in the eye, your child looks you in the eye. You talk about the day. You know what's going on. It's a great way to to catch up and very important. And when we try to, and it's not good for anybody when the activities are such that, again, you're grabbing fast food and you look over somebody when you're driving and the kids are in the back seat eating out of a bag and a parent's is eating out of a bag. That's just that's no way for somebody to have a good life.
It isn't, and the effect I see on the children is obvious. There's just no stability in schedule, and the priorities are all wrong. But the parents have all kinds of problems too. They're worn out. They can't take care of themselves at all. I mean, that's the hardest thing when adults are in the office and we're trying to figure out how to get their diet and lifestyle habits straightened around so that they can live a better life. They don't have any time. And so, again, I think it's great to be busy, and I think it's great to have activities, but both the adults and the children and the family unit and marriages, again, that's probably politically incorrect to say this too, but you have to make investments in these kinds of things, and you can't do that when everybody's hither, thither, and yon, so I think that's an important part of it. It would be easier to get children to eat well if the expectation was that they would do it from the time they start eating. And by the way, that's the way it is in France. Children in France, I don't think that they're eating a diet that you and I would want to teach to our own kids, but they eat a pretty good diet, much better than ours here. And by the age of 2, a child is expected in France to be able to sit in a restaurant and eat the food that the parents are eating by the age of 2. It's not tolerable that they do something else. And there's a lot that has been written about the French style of parenting, which involves the parents saying, essentially, we're married, we have this family unit, we have had a baby, and the baby has come to live with us. The baby came second, we're already here. And we have to make sure that the household doesn't revolve around the child, and they even have a French term for it, that you don't want to develop or raise a child king. Who will then be the center of all attention and make the whole family miserable. It's essentially what it's translated from the French into. And I think that that's a value system. They don't have a lot of ADHD over there, and they also don't have children eating macaroni and cheese instead of what their parents are having for dinner either.
Well, yeah, and if they're a king at home and then the child goes to school and they find out that they're not the complete center of attention, then it's just a recipe for disaster as well.
Right, exactly. So I think there are ways of doing this. There's another situation that I think is really interesting. In Finland, there are 2 things that have happened in Finland that have really addressed the ADHD issue well. One has to do with nutrition and one has to do with education. One of the things that the Finns did is they changed their educational system around. And I've done a lot of research on this issue, and I'm really convinced about it. I think that preschool, we need to do away with it. Okay, it used to be daycare and kids just played, and then before that we just hung out with our parents or our grandparents and we just played. And so when you put children in an academic environment when they're too young, particularly for boys, it's devastating because boys mature less quickly than girls. And so the gap between girls and the boys grows because we're expecting preschool to be structured education, and then kindergarten is much more structured, and you're supposed to be able to learn how to do stuff and remember stuff and write stuff. And by the time these kids get to about 2nd grade, the boys are hopelessly behind, and I think that contributes to one of the reasons why we see so much more ADHD in boys than girls. So the Finns have done away with, the Finnish education system has done away with structured preschool. And there really isn't any structured learning until the child gets to 1st grade age. And I think that's the way it used to be here, and I think we would be well advised to do that, to go back to that here. The second thing is the Finnish government took a look around. I don't remember exactly when this happened, but it was a while ago, and they said, you know what, kids eat crap, and that's not good, and we need to do something about it. So they started implementing a program called SAPERE, SAPERE. And the SAPIR method is used in many countries in Europe. There are 7,000 certified instructors in Finland. I mean, they really took this seriously, and like almost all kids in school get this. And SAPIR is designed to teach kids to appreciate food and variety, and they do fun things. They go to the farmer's market and they make stuff, and the kids can pick up the food and smell it and taste it with their fingers. You know, kids like to handle things with their fingers when they're real little, and it really does make a difference. It teaches kids to be curious about food, to like different things, to be willing to try different things, and so I think that the problem of ADHD in Finland is like really very small compared to here. So if you look at Finland and France, their medication use is like a tiny fraction of here. And I think it's because of the way they raise their children, it's the way that the education systems are structured, and formal programs that they think food is an important enough thing that we should have instructors come into the schools and teach kids this stuff. So I think that's really, really a great idea.
Yeah, that is actually very exciting. I was kind of smiling when you the first part as far as preschool education. I can remember, and I can actually remember where I was. My first job was at West Virginia University. I took an academic job, and I was at a lunchtime meeting or something, and people asked me, and my daughter was 2 or 3 at the time, and they asked me what preschool she was enrolled in. And it's like, well, I hadn't really thought about it yet. And he said, what do you mean? She's not on a waiting list, and it was one of those deals where, it's like, I was panic struck. It's like, oh my God, I've ruined her life already. It's like, she's not going to get in the right school, college. She's screwed for college already, I mean, my God, it's over. And, and it's like, I went home and it's like, okay, wait a minute, calm down here, get herself ahead of things. But it is true that, parents sometimes, and I also remember another episode where, they, even as it, goes on, parents are what drives some of this stuff. It's like, well, my daughter's going to graduate from, she'll have 2 years of college, and by the time she's finished with high school, or 3 years of this, and then it's like, really? And it's like, well, what's she going to do in high school? It's like, isn't high school a time that, you do activities and play sports and do all kinds of great things? I mean, high school's a fun time. It's, it's like, I remember high school being one of the funnest, most fun times of my life. Why would I want to have her? She got a lot of time to sit in a chair to be, to get her college degree when she maybe goes to college. And, right. So I think we drive that, we're always chasing something. And again, I guess maybe the bottom line is we all need to settle down a little bit. Settle down and have dinner together, real food. Well,
that, and the other thing is just we wonder why kids are having trouble sitting still. Yeah, I tell people when I was a kid, and of course there are safety issues, and I recognize things are not the way that they used to be. I'm 62, so I realize things have changed. But when I was a kid, my sister and I, the best way to describe it was we were at large. Okay, because in the summertime, like on a hot summer day or whatever, we would go out and play and ride our bikes in the whole 9 yards. And my mother had to work kind of hard to get us to come in to eat lunch. Then we go back out and play, and then she'd work to get us to come in to eat dinner. We go back out and play till dark, and we were on our bikes, and there wasn't any need to discuss, like, what are we going to do for exercise for our kids? I mean, we were moving around all the time, and we were wiry, scale kids, because of all that activity. And I think there was some merit to not having a lot of money back then, because we didn't have the money to eat out all the time and buy a lot of the garbage. There wasn't so much garbage available too, but that's another way that kids sleep like a log when they run around all day long. You don't have much trouble getting them into bed under those circumstances. So I think that kids need to go back to being kids. I mean, I wasn't expected to learn anything. Now my parents and grandparents taught me stuff, but I wasn't expected to learn anything when I was 3. I was expected to play. That's what 3-year-olds do, play, and it's good for us to play.
Yes, it is. I still like to play.
I do too. I have coloring books at home. I like to color for recreation, like if I'm just watching a movie or something. And the other thing I like to do, which is interesting, is I go to those wine and canvas things, and I went because a friend wanted to go, and then I got really interested in it. And I'm not a bad artist. You can go to my Facebook page and see my most recent painting, and it's actually pretty good if I say so myself. So all that playing as a child made me feel like playing as an adult too.
Yeah, I think hobbies and we all have to have something, an outlet for that. So, recommendations along the lines of, you have a child with, because, we're identifying the problem. It's like, okay, yes, but I have this child that's out of control and the doctor says they have ADHD and, what am I going to do? I'm a concerned parent. I want this, what alternative steps can I possibly do?
Okay, good question. So the first thing is, do not engage in any structured discussions at the child's school with the school nurse and the school psychologist and the people who want to force medicate your child. The teacher wants the child out of the classroom and the school gets more money if your child gets shifted to some type of special learning thing. So don't agree to it and just say you'll take care of it on your own and get back to them. Find a good cognitive psychologist, a cognitive behavioral therapist, the ones that are really good, and you need to find one that does this. This is what the therapy that they do for a living are, like you heard when William Lessler taught that class that you ran. People like him really know how to help children without drugs, and so that's good. The third thing is start to look at how to change the food in the house, and some suggestions. The first thing is start with the familiar. Sometimes we forget that these are kids, right? So you really can't, and you have to keep this in mind. Like I've seen parents say, okay, we're going to get soy milk, and they get brown soy milk and put it on the Cheerios, and now we're finished with plant eating until the kid's 17, right? So you have to have some consideration for what kids are going to do. But start with all kids like fruit, and they usually like some plant foods. That I don't meet many kids who don't like corn and rice and peas and green beans and potatoes. They love potatoes. You can get an air fryer now and make fried potatoes with no oil. Just season them really well and good quality ketchup. So you can start with some really familiar foods that most kids will eat and begin serving those. And then there's a program, and we've used this successfully with so many families, and this is so cool you can't believe it. This doctor by the name of Dr. Lucy Cook invented this program called Tiny Tastes. And her idea was that if you have a real picky eater, what you don't want to do is turn dinner time, because we were talking about how we remember family dinners, so you don't want to turn that into a battleground, because that's kind of counterproductive. So what you do is you get the child to agree to try a pea-sized taste of a vegetable or food they don't like every day for like 10 days. And they get to pick which one it is. And all they have to do is eat it. And every time they eat this pea-sized piece of something, they get a sticker. And when you fill the sticker book, you get to do something that you've already decided that would be fun for everybody, for the family, okay? So we just had a situation like this with a 8 or 9-year-old boy who really didn't like very many foods. And so I asked him in the office, I said, do you like to play games? He said, I love games. I said, okay, how about a food game? And of course, you don't tell him a doctor invented or whatever. I said, here's all you got to do. And I had already talked to the parents about, what could we offer that would be fun to do. So I said, here's the way this works. You go to the store with your parents, and you pick a vegetable you don't like. And he started to frown. I said, now wait, listen to what I'm saying here. I said, pick a vegetable you don't like, and you know what a pea looks like, right? Tiny little pea. All you have to do is make yourself eat a pea-sized bit of that every day for 10 days. And every day that you do it, you get a sticker. And when you fill the sticker book, then you get to go to the movies and out to have pizza with your family. So would you do that? He goes, sure. So he sits there for a while, and he says, let me ask you a question. If I eat 2 of those pea-sized pieces, do I get 2 stickers? I said, yes, you do. And so and what happens invariably, because kids are really smart, pretty soon they're saying, why don't you just give me a dinner plate of that stuff and we'll fill up the book and call it a day. Can we go to the movies tomorrow? I mean, we've actually had kids that are a little bit older say, I don't want, how long does it take to fill this sticker book? Oh my God, we can be at the movies on Friday if we just get this over with already. Grill up an eggplant, I'll eat the thing. So anyway, it's a way to get it away from dinner time. And for most kids, it works. But I tell you, it has to be with the stickers. So my mother was a piano teacher, and my sister owns her piano schools now. And they use stickers to get kids to practice. And my sister says if they ever stop making stickers, she has to close the piano school. So I can't emphasize how important it is for little kids to get stickers. They really will work hard for stickers. So anyway, that's a fun game that you can play to get children to eat some things that they wouldn't otherwise eat. And it does tend to take on a life of its own and get them to be a lot more adventurous.
Sounds good. So family dinners, the game to try something, and I was at a conference up in West Virginia, and, they're doing a lot to try to get, there's actually a lot of problems with kids not getting enough food. And the Farmers Co-op, along with the university, are actually doing educational programs with children, like you talked about, to, introduce them. How do you grow a few things, taste vegetables, different programs on the farmers markets. And so, taking a kid to a farmer's market or having a little backyard garden, I would guess would, let kids taste. I know there's another program in New York City that when the school has a bunch of tower gardens on the roof, and when the kids are involved in planting the seeds and getting the greens and touching the greens, and then they go to the cafeteria and they see the greens are used there, they're much more likely to try them than, you just have a bunch of greens put on your plate at lunchtime, and this is awful.
Exactly. Another thing, we have a pharmacist here who has 4 children, kind of young children. And one of the things that she does, she gives her children each $5 to go to the farmer's market, and they can buy what they want. But it can't be like muffins and all that. It has to be like the real food. And she said they're always geeked up about trying the stuff that they bought with their money. All right, so that's another thing. One other thing I'll mention too is one of the things I love about cookbooks today is they have pictures, so kids can look at pictures and get excited about food. So you can get a cookbook, and there's so many good ones in the plant-based community now, and say to a child, why don't you look through this book and see and find something that you'd like to eat, and then we'll make it together. And they love that kind of stuff. And again, once they pick it, they kind of have some ownership, and that can get them kind of a little bit more adventurous as well.
Well, and, I think it also goes back to the home. If we get the parents back in the kitchen, I grew up, I said earlier, my mom worked, and so I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, who was a wonderful Irish cook, and she baked bread, and she, everything from scratch. She canned, she had a garden, so I was in the garden with her. We picked strawberries and raspberries and blackberries. So we were, it was truly farm to table an experience. Although I never cooked, I was always with her. She was my idol, so I watched everything that she did. I tried to make bread once. She would give me a little pan once, and instead of using greasing the pan as they did back then, I used perfume. That didn't turn out so good when my dad tried it. But being around that gave me a sense of where my food came from, and a love of that experience. She showed her love by making food for us. And, my mom, again, was she was an Italian cook, because she still is an Italian cook. And, I was around her when she would do things and taste things. And so when it came my turn, even though that, it was very matriarch type of kitchens, their territory, so to speak, when it came time for me to get my own kitchen or try to experiment, I still had that sense of, I look back with fond memories of that. And I think people forget that you can really develop a nice relationship with a parent or grandparent by spending time with them. And it's just about time. It doesn't have to be something fancy, but just spending time in the kitchen and, maybe having them do a little something, but maybe just being around and seeing that preparation. And that really goes a long way to develop that appreciation for food, appreciation for family time. I think it's such a short period of time that you have with your children. I think that, you should enjoy spending time with them.
Right, exactly. And a little bit of time invested in that way pays dividends for forever. And I think, sometimes, I don't know if you ever get this when you're talking to people in your office, but people will say, you really think it's all that simple? Like, you just got to eat food and drink water and eat family dinner and go to the farmer's market shop. Yeah, it really is all that simple. And we're so trained to think that the best solutions for any problem we can think of are high-tech, expensive, and require outside intervention. And the best solutions to most of the problems that we have right now are much simpler and should come from inside the people and the family unit. So I think that we just need to spread the word about this, and then provide people with a lot of resources about how to actually implement.
Yeah, it was. It was funny. I had a lady that had diabetes for a lot of years that just joined the practice, and he was in today. And I mean, glucose is in the 300s on hundreds, over 100 units of insulin, and now she's down less than 50. Glucoses are 150s, 160s, and she's starting to lose weight. And she's like just so brought to tears by the fact that you mean all I have to do is I can eat, and she would bring up starches or something. It's like, yes, potatoes, they're fine. You can have the potatoes and whole grain. I want you to have those, wide variety. I love fruits and vegetables. I can have fruit. Yes, you can have fruit. And it's like, this is all I have to do to make this go away. And it's like, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, well, I've had people jump up and kiss me when I told them they could have potatoes. All these people do these paleo diets and things because they think they're going to be really excited to eat animal food all the time, but they're shocked at how much they miss carbohydrate foods and how much they miss potatoes and bananas and that sort of thing. So, I think that from a palatability standpoint and an acceptance standpoint, the plant-based diet may look a little harder at the beginning, but it wears a whole lot better over time, because as much as you think you want to eat steak and eggs 3 times a day, it gets old real fast.
Yes, I can just, I can almost feel the indigestion building up now. Well, I really do appreciate you taking time to spend, and I think this gives people, an alternative, because I think that especially that first one when you said, don't talk, because, I do think that kids, teachers get bamboozled, parents get bamboozled when the teacher calls them and your kid's not behaving, and we got to do this, and you got to do this, or they're going to get kicked out of the school, and, it freaks them out, and, these are a lot of really good alternatives to look into and save these kids from just misery.
Right. Exactly. The parents should assume moral responsibility for their children. Do not outsource it to other people, including the school. There's been too much of that going on too. And I think those people at the schools mean well, but the problem is they are victims of the same bad information as the doctors who are drugging the children who have ADHD. So it's not some vast conspiracy or anything. It's just bad training, bad practices, a lot of corruption, that sort of thing. So you just have to take the bull by the horns and deal with this yourself, because parents really do know what's best for their own children. Don't outsource that to anybody else.
Great. Well, I appreciate you taking time to speak with me, and certainly people up in your neck of the woods, they should look you up. We'll leave information in the show notes so they can take your courses. I highly recommend the course. I enjoyed every minute of it, learned a lot, and pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Have a great evening.
You too.
I hope you enjoyed the interview with Dr. Pam Popper. I certainly did. It was a great pleasure. Again, I'll leave her contacts in the show notes, but you can reach her at drpampopper.com, and her health and wellness company is Wellness Forum Health, and that's wellnessforumhealth.com. Again, if you'd like to send me an email, please email me at Jami, Jami, at drdulaney.com. It's DOCTORDULANEY. Visit my website at drdulaney.com to find out how you could become a member of the practice and what's going on and get some recipes. I write a weekly blog that addresses some health topic or something that's come up. Again, this was not an episode to put down mental health or make it seem any less than it is. It's a real problem today, and we all want to raise healthy, well-adjusted children, and it can be very, very difficult with all the stressors that's going on. And, certainly you don't want dinner time and family time to be a negative time in your household. So, again, stress the positive. I like the idea of the sticker book. Anything you can do to keep things positive. Tim Marie Hagenberger has said, in the past, I haven't found something prepared in a way that I like it yet. Keep it positive. Keep trying things until you really can decide that you've tried it just every way and you just don't really like it. Sometimes playing blindfold games with children to see if they can taste something different, trying different nut milks, blindfolded for texture and taste. I will caution you on the nut milks thing. I think I've said it before in a podcast that there can be a lot of extra added oils in nut milk to give it that creamy sense, but we don't want that. That's not healthy. Of course, that's why the dairy industry puts all the sugar and stuff into milk, strawberry milk, chocolate milk, is to try to get their point across. So we don't want to do that. We want to raise healthy kids, good teeth, exposed to lots of color, fruits, and vegetables. And it's not, kids don't have to drink some sort of milk, whether it's cow's or almond milk. It's just a thing that we grew up with to put on our cereal that Quakers and Kellogg's taught us. So, you can put a little fruit juice or just, the frozen fruit. I like frozen berries on some shredded wheat occasionally, and the berries kind of melt and they hydrate the shredded wheat, and I've got a little crunch, and it's a great way to go. So be creative and hang in, be positive, eat your vegetables, get outside, get some sunshine, go for a run, and I'll talk to you next week. Thanks for listening.